Wolfpack, what is going on? Your boy, the Wolf of RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves here with your week 3 rankings rundown as we do every Tuesday, right around 5 p.m. Eastern time. I rank every position live, giving you my thoughts and feedback on as many players as I can within the hour or so. Of course, if you're live, I always love to answer your sit-start questions as well. And if you're catching the replay, I hope you find this helpful. These will be updated yet again on Thursday live, where I'll also have a Reddit Ask Me Anything at 5 p.m., followed by this show at 7 p.m. on Thursday. But let's jump in. My first crack at the week 3 waivers, and it's going to look, or not waivers, rather, rankings. It's going to look a whole lot different than it typically does, with some studs being out of the picture. So brutal injuries in week 2. Hopefully you're not having to deal with too much carnage here. Let's get into the quarterbacks. When Lamar Jackson gets Kansas City, they've allowed, let's quickly get a look at here, and let me know if you can't see this, but the points allowed to the positions here. Falcons are the worst at QB. Seattle's giving up the second most, Miami third, with all 3 of those teams over 30 points allowed to quarterbacks. So, yeah, pepper your quarterbacks against Falcons, Seahawks, and Dolphins. The Browns not far behind with 26. Washington football team 5th. Kansas City Chiefs 6th. We'll go just the top 8 here. You got Chargers also giving up a ton of points at QBs. And then the Saints also getting bashed by quarterbacks. Now, again, this is only 2 weeks in, so it's not like we should overreact. Somebody might have faced the, just juggernaut 1 week, and that's why they're giving it up. But those teams certainly at the top have some consistencies with sucking and letting a lot of points up. So let's dive in here. Lamar Jackson, a great matchup. You got to have him at your top. It's going to be a points bonanza. It's going to go back and forth. They've given up the 6 most points, and they have not faced anything close to the level of Lamar. This dude does step up in his big games, and I really think we just see a factory of points from really both sides, but I'm more worried about Mahomes, who hasn't put up a ridiculous stat line yet, and then also gets that ferocious Baltimore defense. They're on the bottom end of those points allowed here. You see the Ravens 28th most points to the position, only right now 13 points per game to QBs. So they have been stifling. They also haven't had incredible competition either. But Pat Mahomes, tough matchup, but blazing guns, blazing offenses should be right in your top 5, 6 regardless. I mean, Josh Allen's hard to keep outside of the top. Kyler Murray getting Detroit is just a joke. The guy has been lighting up defenses. The Konami code is in full effect. I mean, did you guys see that high step just runs around the entire defense? So I love me some Kyler. I love Dak. I think I might even have Dak just a slight step above Kyler this week. Seattle giving up the 2nd most points, and that game just promises to be a shootout. So you got to, Russell, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns next week. I love Kyler, but I have him just below those 2 guys there, and I feel like that rounds out like the cheat code style quarterbacks. Josh Allen just knocking on the door, though. Cam Newton against Vegas could definitely put up some points. We saw the passing upside. We've seen the rushing upside both weeks. I love me some Cam Newton against Las Vegas. They rank, I think, middle of the pack, though. Actually bottom, 24th there in points allowed to quarterback. So it's not like Cam's must hammer, but he's in your top 10. Let's be real here. It's not the best, your elite 4 have juicy ass matchups. And then after that, it's kind of like, Deshaun gets Pitt, and he hasn't looked anything special at all. I do like Stafford. I think I'm always a Stafford apologist here, but love him against an Arizona team that does give up a bunch to quarterbacks. The most points last year, middle of the pack so far this year. I can't have Mahomes below any of these guys, not with the matchups looking the way they are right now. Ooh, let me go back there. In terms of, the other ones to target, Cleveland this week, they get, let's look here and see who Cleveland, Washington, and the Saints, another great matchup. So Aaron Rodgers getting a New Orleans team that has been getting just slapped around. And Rodgers is on that FU tour. So I like Rodgers a bit more than Cam, a bit more than Matt Ryan. Ryan, though, that offense is just unloading it week in and week out. So I do like me some Matt Ryan. Don't get me wrong. Um, I would say that cuts off right around, this Big Ben area, who looks good. 3 touchdowns last week. Houston, in terms of matchup, has been, mediocre, 19th against the position. So they've been okay, 18-point average. I think Ben will be good for 20 points, but I don't see him lighting the world on fire this week. Meanwhile, though, Cleveland, giving up the 4th most points. They get Haskins. That's kind of gross. And like Mayfield gets, that could be your ugly shootout game that everybody's cheap and they end up going, back and forth. Nobody wants them. But I would probably target the McLaurins, the OBJs, and not really touch that quarterback's situation. I mean, I don't get why Ryan Tannehill doesn't get more respect, guys. Like, he just had 30 points without A.J. Brown. Yeah, it was the Jags, but he had the 3rd most quarterback points of anybody last year once he took over as the starter. And all he does is play and ball and put up fantasy points. 4 touchdowns. I mean, everybody's got to regress, right? The Titans have to regress in the red zone. It's not looking like that. This Arthur Smith guy may be the real deal, the coordinator, and Ryan Tannehill, the benefactor there. So I love him in my top 12, pretty much an every week starter at this point, and not far behind him has to be Gardner Minshew. Whoops, I didn't mean to move that tier here. Let me get Minshew bumped up right to that under Big Ben range, certainly above Drew Brees. That pop gun arm has looked atrocious this year. Denver banged up in the secondary, not like the tough matchup they used to be. The only risk there is if they get up so big, they just start to run the ball out. But clearly lower on Deshaun Watson this week. I like me some Joe Burrow. I don't want to play Watson. Again, he was bailed out late in week 1, did not get bailed out last week, and now gets Pittsburgh, among the toughest matchups you could possibly have. So this is like my remaining QB1s, I'd say. And I, again, don't feel great about Breeze. I'd probably even rather have Burrow in there in my lineup. And now you're getting into like the dregs. You got to have Goff, who's looked really good this year. Potentially in the fringe. Yeah, tough matchup for Buffalo, but he's looked phenomenal. Rivers gets the Jets, but he also got the Vikings and didn't do a damn thing with it. I think Ryan Tannehill, again, severely underrated right now based on these rankings. I got to have Watson within the you can start him QB1s. Let's be real. Can run in for scores at any time. Don't love me Daniel Jones, especially without Saquon. Hate Kirk Cousins. I mean, I don't see any reason for him to be rated up as highly as he is. Get the hell out, Kirk. This is probably going to be the week Mitch Trubisky wins somebody $1 million facing Atlanta, who's given up by far the most points to quarterbacks. It's just a matter of, does Atlanta go back and forth with them? And I think they totally will. It's not like Chicago's defense has been overly earth-shattering here. Let's see where they rank. I guess 29th, so maybe better than I was giving them credit for. But they also haven't faced anything overly special either. So I like Trubisky to sling it around and get you some fantasy points. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, so disappointing, but the Chargers are among the top 6 in terms of fantasy points allowed. So I could see Teddy, no Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, that would seem to hurt, right? Not having such a dominant threat out of the backfield, especially in the screen game. But McCaffrey is such a red zone maven. I mean, maybe I'm just a Bridgewater apologist, but I could see him definitely picking it up. Ryan Fitzmagic, too. In terms of sheer streamers, like the only risk with him is if he gets benched early, because he does ultimately suck in real life, but he could end up just putting up 25 points. I mean, this guy was the QB4 in fantasy when he became a starter. Everyone wants to acknowledge Tannehill, but not Ryan Fitzmagic, just balling out, chucking it up. We saw Gesicki really emerge. So if you're desperate and need a stream, that Thursday night game, hideous, Miami and Jacksonville, ew. But also, you could get some good fantasy bonanzas from both Minshew and Fitzmagic. Could definitely see that one having some real upside. A game I'm totally going to want to get on in the showdown slate there. Other than that, I'm not feeling Derek Carr against New England. He's played some good ball. Jimmy G is expected to play, and getting the Giants, even if he's a little dinged up, I'd have to have above Daniel Jones and Mayfield. Hebert, I wish he was the go-to guy. They're saying Taylor's the starter. Now, if Hebert's the one, he'll be right here in like 16 to 19 range, right in that area. One of the highest upside guys I think you can stash at the moment. So I love me some Justin Herbert. But ultimately, if the coach Anthony is going to be a complete fucking hard ass and say he didn't do enough, he's the backup for a reason, we didn't win the game. I mean, Tyrod Taylor almost blew it against the Bengals. Never mind that Herbert had you competing against into overtime with the best team in the league. So this is my first look, my kind of gut reaction. Again, I could see a Trubisky blow up. Might, go for him over Watson. See you guys' questions coming in. I will promise you I'll be over there for sure. Don't you worry. So that's my quarterbacks. Let's start hitting a couple of your questions, and then we'll get back here while this loads. Wolf, is Hines droppable or a hold, just bench depth? I mean, he's holdable if there's nothing out there to drop him for, but this is an intriguing week on waivers. So I'd want to know who's there, Dan. Like, I'd prefer, McKinnon to Hines. I'd prefer, obviously, Josh Kelly. Probably if you need a starter, Mike Davis, I'd even prefer. But I'm not into Hines myself. Mike Adu, 01. Is Cam the real deal or fake news? I think it's real, brother. I really do. And why not? He showed he could get it done when the game flow is positive and they're just bleeding the clock. He still had 20-something points, I think 28, 29 against the Dolphins. And then when he has to get to the air and sling it because he's facing a good offense on the other side, like the Seahawks, just put up 397 pass yards. So, I mean, looks matchup proof, looks game flow proof. He's always going to be a threat for one, if not two scores. I mean, now back-to-back 2 scores on the ground. So, yeah, I think this is the real deal. I think it's just a matter of how high is his ceiling, depends on the opponent they're facing. But the floor is so good, 20-something points every week. This is MVP level Cam that we saw in 2015. Herbert over Brady? No. I like Brady's weapons too much. And I like Bruce Arians' sling it offense. I do like Herbert, but he's not even anointed the starter yet by his own coach. How much do Jonnu and Gesicki jump for you? Who'd you take this week? They both, I've been high on Jonnu all since the beginning of the preseason, tweeted out, Jonnu over Gronk, which got a lot of shit, but ultimately is panning out quite nicely. So I've long been a fan of Jonnu, Jake Knight. He's always been in my top 12 tight ends, number 11, I think, coming into the preseason, and he's only gone up now to about tight end 8. Gesicki, though, I was not overly enthusiastic about coming into the year. Man, did he shoot it up. Now, I go Jonnu over Gesicki. I think his target share week to week is a little more secure, whereas Gesicki, we might see a few more booms and bust games. But, yeah, they're both getting a great bump up here. Pick 2 wide receivers to start. Deontay, Boyd, Preston, Golladay if he plays. I think you got to go Golladay because he's going to play. They didn't rush him back for a reason, so you got to expect him to be all the way back. And then I like Deontay. But when we get to wide receivers, I will have to check who Boyd's facing and how they rank against wide receivers. Let's pull up the running back matchups here for you folks to figure out who to prioritize in terms of points allowed at the position. And we got to start at the top, obviously. Zeke is the guy. Was my number 1 guy last week. Didn't necessarily hit that because Aaron Jones is just a sick motherfucker. But still, a great performance nonetheless. I don't think you can have Derrick Henry above a lot of these guys. I mean, he didn't get it done against the Jags. He is very one-dimensional. I am the ultimate of Derrick Henry truthers, but he has to be below some of these multi-dimensional threats like Alvin Kamara, like a Dalvin Cook, like a Miles Sanders, especially in a great matchup against Cincy. Let's look here at points allowed. Carolina, the most. That's not a surprise. So Eckler, I think, in a great spot to have a monster week. And then you got the Bengals coming in at number 2. So Sanders, blow-up spot after he reemerged as a dominant workhorse. 80% of the carries, 70% of the snaps, like 70% of the backfield targets. The guy saw a career high in targets. I mean, the dude is a monster. So you got to have Miles Sanders, in my opinion, right here toward your top. Then we got Vegas facing New England this week. I can't fully endorse New England backs right now. James White, if he's back, obviously off of that tragic news, you got to imagine the team's going to really rally around him and try to make his day something special if he's playing, but we don't know that yet. Detroit has Kenyon Drake, who I think is in a great spot to rebound. He's been getting the carries. He's been getting the volume, all the snaps. He is the workhorse. He's just had a couple tough front sevens in a row. But this matchup, no doubt, will be a bigger one here against Detroit. I think we get like a nice 2-3 touchdown Drake day. And he makes owners very, very happy. But Jonathan Taylor against the Jets, I mean, what's left to say? 26 carries, 100 yards, and a TD, just a beast in every sense of the word. Jacobs, New England has been decent against running backs, but I don't think it's quite like, the 8th. No, that's the Jets. So 17th. Their front, 7, though, pretty weak since Hightower left the lineup. But let's give, the top tier is and Jones. I mean, how can you have him this low? I get how good the Saints are against the run, but the target share, especially if Adams sits, he's averaged right around 8 targets a game without Aaron Jones has when Adams is out. And that's, what we saw last Sunday. That's what kind of makes him a monster. It's tough. He was so boom or bust, and this would seem to suggest a bust game, a tough matchup, but I'm not overly concerned. So a little lower on Henry than the consensus here, a little higher on Drake and Sanders at the top. I do love me some Austin Eckler. I got to be a little lower here on Chubb, on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Just a dud of a week. And that Chargers front, it is good. It's fierce. But that's the whole point of Helaire is he should be game flow, matchup proof. And it just wasn't there on Sunday. So that was a little concerning. Baltimore giving up the fewest points to running backs as well, just to show you that. So not very encouraging matchup-wise for him. In terms of Cleveland, they are facing the football team here. So Washington, that front 7 has been very good against running backs. So not the best of matchups for Chubb, but I really, really like how that zone blocking scheme looked. That line is powerful. So I think this is going to be a nice, juicy matchup for them both. But in terms of other matchups to target, the Bucs have actually been surprisingly generous to running backs this year. That I think is a little more fluky. The touchdowns have been scored, but they've been stifling the guys on the ground, just kind of bending in the red zone. Texans are very bad against running backs. That's kind of a trend from last year. So the Texans, they get Pittsburgh. So I do think Connor in a nice spot. Todd Gurley, so touchdown dependent. I don't know how he could be inside anybody's top 20. Chicago, a decent defense too. How are they against running backs? Let's find out. You're 20th, so towards the bottom 10 in terms of points allowed. So not very generous there. Let's just keep going. We don't have to keep bouncing back and forth between each of them, but I just did want to highlight Packers are giving up a lot to running backs, as are the Rams and the Jets. So quickly, who are the Rams facing LAR? I guess the Bills. I don't love either of those guys. The Jets, so NYJ gets the Colts. We already saw that with Jonathan Taylor being so highly rated up there. And Green Bay, Aaron Jones gets that tough matchup against New Orleans. That's why Kamara, my number 2 guy for the week here, in a great exploitable matchup. So in terms of these remaining RB1s or high-end RB2s, I think this is right about where I cut it off. Now Montgomery, 26 points last week, no joke at all. Mixon, I'd have a little bit lower. Let's see this guy get it done before we go all the way back in Philadelphia, ranked 16th against it. So, middle of the pack there. I like David Montgomery's performance. Very encouraging, but if they get game flowed out against Atlanta, I don't think we see as great of a day. Now, I love me some Jerick McKinnon this week. I think this is going to be a monstrous performance from McKinnon against the Giants. He's looked nimble. He's looked quick. He's already been a highly used receiver. Yeah, last week only 1 target, but they didn't need to throw it. So whenever it is a passing situation, McKinnon's been quite highly used. Let me know if you have questions about him. But clearly, at running back 19, I'm thinking a big blow-up is in store. And I also really, really like Josh Kelly this week, facing Carolina that has given up 3 touchdown day to Josh Jacobs and then gets completely smashed this last weekend. They're just a pathetic, abysmal, non-existent defense at all. Leonard Fournette had 102. Ronald Jones had a touchdown himself. So I like me some Josh Kelly, a little bit below James Robinson against that bad Miami D. James Robinson just the clear-cut lead back, but Kelly did out-touch Austin Eckler. If they get up early, they get into the red zone. Kelly has been the guy. So don't be surprised to see him put in 2 touchdowns this weekend. Definitely rather have him as compared to David Johnson, Todd Gurley, and Antonio Gibson. Some very, very encouraging signs this last week. Sees 66% of the snaps, runs triple the routes that he did the week before. So some great encouraging signs. In terms of points allowed, Cleveland, I believe, they're one of the better teams, 26th against the run, and points allowed. So very tough, stiff against the run, rather. I can't feel great about Gibson, but I do love the way he's trending and can kind of slide into this RB2 tier if you need him. I'd probably have him just below here, Antonio Gibson. Now, Kansas City has been middle of the pack, 15th. They're very generous running backs through the air, but that's not going to be Ingram or Dobbins' strength. That backfield's a nightmare right now. I keep Dobbins, and I'm high on Dobbins because of the talent, but only 2 carries last week. You just can't. I think that's going to be a headache. I think it's going to be a bad headache week in and week out. I don't know how Malcolm Brown's ranked, by the way, ahead of Darrell Henderson. Now we'll see what happens with Cam Akers. He's day to day with a rib cartilage loose, but ultimately it was Darrell Henderson that took over that backfield show. I believe he out-touched Henderson by like 7 or 8, got some goal line looks, looked really explosive. I remember how high we were on Henderson, and it wasn't without logic or reason. He definitely has some intriguing appeal. Buffalo, one of the better defenses, but he's on a lot of waiver wires. Should see about 15 touches or so, depending on Akers' health. And I have a better feeling about him than I do Malcolm Brown, who started to get phased out in favor of Darrell here. I don't feel good. Again, it's like I said about Ingram. I think Moss, the Rams got the 7th most points. A decent bet to find the end zone. Him and Singletary. But yeah, we're starting, as you can see already, to get into that ugly territory. I'm going to have Mike Davis a bit higher. 8 catches in 1 quarter on 8 targets. No joke. Shows he's going to kind of come in and be that clear volume guy. So I think he warrants immediate starting and streamability. And, he's nothing special, but the dude can roll. He's a bowling ball. And I think his quick feet, in the hole with that big frame, he could have some decent days ahead. So that's where I cut this tier off. I just want to check down here and see, is anybody getting overlooked? I do like Myles Gaskin a lot more than Sony. I mean, Sony's just complete crap. DeAndre Swift, nothing special either. I would have Gaskins here. We got to let it kind of load there. I'd have Gaskins at the top of this tier. Sees, 7 carries, 7 targets, definitely the lead on opportunities on that team. So he, to me, is a potential streamer, volume dependent, of course, but Jacksonville, I can't imagine they're doing anything special against the run. Yeah, 11th most points to the position. And then I do like, I'd actually have James White, assuming he plays. I'd have him a bit higher. The Vegas Raiders, as we saw, gave up the 3rd most points this year. So I think James White on a team that will probably make a concerted effort to get him some touches, get him feeling good after what a tragic Sunday. I could see James White having a nice fantasy day as a bounce back with high motivation. Other than that, down here, Cohen might get some work. I have no interest in Sony. Just a complete plotter, disgusting. Give me, Chase Edmonds for a cheap touchdown instead of Sony. Hines probably going to get game flowed out of that one. So as I look down here, I don't see too many names. Burkhead would be an intriguing stream if James White does sit, if he needs that time to heal with his family, of course. So I have him a little bit lower. One guy I will bump up, I'm going to take out Mostert, but I don't even know if he's listed down here. Jeff Wilson, for those of you real desperate for a Hail Mary, he came in as soon as the other guys went down and kind of, it was very small sample size, but split snaps with McKinnon. And this has never been a bell cow under Shanahan since he got to the 49ers. That 1 year of Carlos Hyde, uh, other than that. So as much as I love McKinnon, I think and hope he can take over. I mean, Shanahan just made this dude the fourth highest paid running back just 2 seasons ago. And ego Shanahan's going to want to come out and prove that he was smart to do so. And so I think McKinnon gets all the work and just eats and does not look backwards for this weekend. But Jeff Wilson is a decent bet if you are completely desperate at a stab to the end zone. But other than him, I'd rather have Jeff Wilson than most of these guys. Maybe not Swift. I'd rather have Swift than Malcolm Brown. Dangerous receiver, Swift, obviously. We knew that. But Jeff Wilson, kind of that Hail Mary of the week, in my opinion, kind of slots in right there. There's no other running back. I'll go through and sift through that trash down there, but none really catching my eyes. Let's now get into some more questions while the receivers load. Need a wide receiver 2 and flex full PPR. D. Parker, K. Allen, J. Robinson, Gurley. Parker getting the Jags makes him a lot more appealing, and that touchdown was nice this weekend. He, I think, is back. I like Keenan as well. Carolina, just a secondary waiting to be abused there. But Robinson does get Miami. It's tricky because then you have 2 Thursday night games. If that game does not flow the right way, you're pissed, Mateo. But if they come in and eat, then you're just feeling great riding into Sunday. Gurley's the least favorite of my options on that, if that helps at all. I think my gut right now is saying Parker and Keenan Allen. But Robinson, if you were going to bench Parker and want to get Robinson in there to have some Thursday night action, I want one of those two in at least. And I could see you going Parker and Robinson as well. If only I knew that Tyrod was definitely starting. We don't know what his current status is because Hebert obviously helped that offense out a ton. Start Jay Kelly or A. Gibson, you think, this week? I'm going to go Kelly over Gibson. I think that Carolina matchup's too juicy to avoid. The touchdowns, 2 touchdown upside, I'd say, for Josh Kelly this week. And I love all the signs I saw for Gibson, but I am benching him personally for Josh Kelly. I have Madison, long one here for Robert Moreno. I have Madison, Snell on the bench. Also, Lindsey in the ER. Who is worth holding on to and who should I drop? I need to move Lindsey off my IR in order to make waiver moves. I don't have Cook or Connor. So the guys mentioned aren't handcuffs, and tight end and D special teams are the needs. You got to trust your gut. Like, they're all the same in terms of their huge upside handcuffs, both Madison and Snell behind injury-prone guys. I'm not dropping Lindsey. I want to see another week. So it'd be one of the handcuffs, and I'd probably drop Snell personally, even with Connor having more of the handcuff likelihood. I'd say Madison has a little more standalone value and just more upside if something does happen, in my opinion. Edelman over David Johnson, half PPR. Yeah, I think so, Marcos. We saw that this week, right? If it's a pass happy script, and I think the Raiders can put up their points. We saw him against getting that win against the Saints just last night. So I think Edelman will have to do his damage, and I like him a lot. Do not like that Pittsburgh matchup for David Johnson at all. Let's get 2 more and then back into it. Would you trade Mahomes for Drake PPR? Cam Newton is the backup. If you have Cam Newton, then I would. Especially as long as that's not a 2 QB league, Sidley. I would go get Drake. He's going to dominate Detroit this weekend. So I agree with that. I think I would. Can't tune it live. $100 budget. Have all of it. How much on Mike Davis? If you're a Christian McCaffrey owner and your running backs are hurt, then I'd say, right around that $20-ish bid. Because let's be real here. This is Mike Davis. We're not talking about a freak show. But he also did get 8 catches on 8 targets, all in the fourth quarter. Should have that workhorse style role. Got hyped up all preseason by Matt Rule as the clear-cut number 2. They even sent Bonifant packing Reggie Bonifant. So, I can see 20 to 25 if you really needed it. But you saw my rankings as well. I have Kelly, McKinnon, some other guys that could be out there even higher. Darrell Henderson, that have season-long value in addition to however long McCaffrey's out. Hell no, says David Copper. I don't know what that's referencing, but hell no. Funny that CEH scores nearly 20 points and is a dud. Did he have 20 points this week? I didn't even see that. I thought he only had are you saying the week 1 and then is a dud the next, Kyle? I thought he kind of busted this week. Baltimore 40, KC 21. Big prediction here from Jeremiah. KC kind of getting romped, it sounds like. Moss hasn't impressed me so far. Has it been the matchups or is Singletary just outplaying him? It hasn't been the matchups because they've been in some pretty friendly matchups. He doesn't look like anything too crazy though. So I like Moss because he's getting the red zone touches still, but not a huge fan. I agree with you. There hasn't been anything really flashy about him yet. What kind of fab? I did say I'm going to get back to the receivers. So here's the last one. Then I'll get back to your questions in a second. But I want to hit the YouTube crowd. I know we got a few here. So what kind of fab would you spend on Henderson? Again, it's so case-by-case basis. Do you need running backs? Did you suffer some injuries? But I really liked what I saw. I mean, he looked explosive, was finding the zone scheme, hitting those holes nicely. I look at about similar to Davis, 20-ish amount, 20% or so of my fab budget is what I think. What up, my guy? What's going on, Jack? I got a trade offer. Trade away Julio Cam from M. Brown Hunt half PPR. I guess that depends on who your backup quarterback is. It's certainly not. I don't think I do it though. I mean, Julio, you're selling real low in my opinion. I like Marquise and I like Hunt, but you're giving up, a potential cheat code QB in Cam and an alpha wide receiver 1. So I wouldn't do that, nor would I do Julio for Monty. I mean, that's selling really low. He had one bad game, folks. This is still Julio Jones. And he dropped a 46-yard touchdown. We wouldn't even be asking this question, right, Jack? So ultimately, I don't think you can even consider benching Julio, trading Julio Jones for that. Come on, Monty. Ugh. I'm embarrassed, Jack. Don't ask that. Come on. Sample or Schultz? Who's Sample? Honestly, I would love to say I know who everybody is, but I don't know who you're talking about with Sample. Schultz, though, speak on him, I really like what we saw. 10 targets, team high. Fills right into that Jarwin role and then some. Not the athlete of Jarwin, but very dependable set of hands, a clear third down target. I really like Schultz. So I don't know who Sample is, but I would certainly be going in on Schultz. Let's talk about some wide receivers and bring up the old trusty matchup grid. Points against. So Seattle now ranking the highest in points allowed, trailed only real closely by Minnesota. So those two teams, obviously the most generous. Miami not far behind. We just saw Diggs completely dismantle that team, that poor young corner. Atlanta right up there. You shouldn't be surprised by that because we've seen that all year, them just getting bombed. Denver giving up a bunch of wide receivers. Now, this one's surprising is New England. I don't think that's going to be the case after they faced Russ. Russ lit them up, but it's going to take special quarterbacks to light up the Pats. I don't consider Derek Carr special, so we'll see for this week. Broncos, surprisingly, very generous to wide receivers right now, though. Cowboys, Browns, Packers, and Giants wrap out your top 10 generous. And down on the opposite end, the Cardinals been pretty ungenerous, but that was also against the pathetic 49ers receiving core week 1. We saw McLaurin go and tear them to shreds. I think any good alpha can go in against Arizona, and I think Galladay is going to have a decent week against them. So I don't buy that one. We still have some data to collect before we avoid these. I do buy that Baltimore is very good against the pass. Cincy, really? They were decent against the pass last year too, which surprises me. So that's something to keep in mind. Probably because they can just get run all over and you don't need to throw it against them. The Chiefs, I don't love. They've been facing mediocre quarterbacks at best, but that's a pretty low. I'm not fading against them. Carolina, I find is an anomaly. So I don't know that all these numbers can be fully trusted quite yet. So let's dive in, though. Detroit, we saw right here towards the top in points allowed, didn't we? I feel like Detroit gets bombed. I guess 13th, so not quite the bomb show that I was expecting. New Orleans has one of the better secondaries, but we did see them get lit up at the tight end position at least last night. So, Devontae, I go DeAndre. Tyreek Hill, I think, is a bit of a risk. How is Chicago against the wide receivers? One of the better teams right now. That's not fluky either, in my opinion, but still, they're so good. Calvin and Julio. I really think, squeaky wheel time. It's time for Allen Robinson to get to go off, to go completely bananas. But Calvin Ridley, top scoring receiver in fantasy so far, has to be up there. I think Mike Evans, a little bit above some of these other guys. Denver gave up the 6th most points to the position, and Evans looked just as good as he ever has, as predicted here on the must-watch DFS show. But this to me is like clear 1, 2, and then we're looking at like the remaining wide receiver ones. How generous is Tennessee to receivers? Middle of the pack. So Thielen, what happened last week though? I mean, that was bad. Seattle put up the most wide receivers. So give me some Amari, that Devontae Jordy style role in Mike McCarthy's attack. Give me DK Metcalf, the most grown of all the men in the world. Holy crap, he's a beast. Boom. Lockett, I think it's a little bit of a bump up here. Now, am I wrong to not be convinced that Juju's really the one here? I could see Deontay Johnson clearly leads the team in air yards and targets. Despite those touchdowns for Juju, the volume has been going to Deontay, and he found the end zone himself this past week. So I like. I got to be a little lower on him. Let's see about Houston. So they're decent. Tennessee is 15th, as we saw. Chargers, I think one of the worst secondaries in the league after losing Darwin, but they somehow have been pretty good on defense against everything, including the ace Mahomes there. Dallas can't be too high, right? Yeah, 7th most. They lost Byron Jones, and that secondary has been kind of getting picked apart. I think that game, Seattle versus Dallas, is one to pepper in lineups this week, undoubtedly. Green Bay, been generous. Cleveland, been generous to wide receivers too. So all the more reason for me to just love Terry McLaurin fresh off that blow-up week. Say this is where I kind of cut it into now more so wide receiver 2s. Washington, a bad secondary. We just saw them get bombarded by Kyler Murray. So Odell could continue to go with that. A tough run defense, kind of that funnel style where you have to throw against them, could be another decent day. I go here. Woods, revenge game narrative. Okay. You work in a little revenge game, you get a nice little bump up there. What else do we have? I got to get back in on Marquise Brown this week. I know we disappointed. I know, we recommended him so vehemently, and he did not pan out quite like we hoped. Diggs, the Jalen Ramsey experience probably won't be too kind. Let's see how good the Rams have actually been, though. So, yeah, 29th. So that's risky for Diggs this week. And how could you ever recommend the guy as as a bench after he just completely feasted? But that's tough. I am not in on Will Fuller. Get him out of my sight. 0 points, stretching on the sideline, just all the classic Will Fuller crap you've become accustomed to. Golladay, I think his ranking will get bumped right into this range once he's confirmed he's expected to play. No word about a snap count. Arizona, I think, is highly beatable. We saw McLaurin just go completely bananas against them last weekend. Edelman should eat up some Vegas. 17th, so decent, but not like terrifying here either. Denver, who's Denver get? We already looked at them, right? The Bucks. Godwin down here at 52. He's already confirmed ready to play this week. So he's got to be right there among your remaining RB, wide receiver ones. A generous matchup against Denver. Just a matter of how competitive do they keep it this week. With Driscoll slinging the rock. Oh boy, 8.2 yards average depth of target last year. So not like a complete. You got it. Where is Judy? Why is he? Oh, 37. Okay, there he is. Sanders, what a bust. Oh, that hurt. So, with Diggs getting that shadow coverage, I could see John Brown being the sneaky play. I like me some Marvin, too, so I'm going to bump him up. AJ Green sucks. I mean, can't get on the same page with his quarterback, and I think it's less about Burrow, and I think it's more about AJ. Say this one, though, kind of right there with like your high-end wide receiver twos, I guess acceptable wide receiver ones. I got to keep bumping Edelman up. Just the clear apple to Cam's eye. And N'Keal Harry, solid effort as well. But I think Vegas can keep it close enough that air has to stay under the ball. Don't see how anybody had AJ Green above Tyler Boyd. Much more productive. This could be the Gallup coming up party. But it is very, very clear he's behind CeeDee Lamb in this pecking order already, as we predicted. There, I toot my own horn. So I don't feel anything that I have to have him above, alpha right here. Jerry Jeudy, who I think gets a big bump up with Sutton out. I think Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore as high as this. Robbie Anderson's back-to-back 100-yard days. Getting screens, getting the intermediate game. So I love me a little bit of Robbie here. I think Parker, what's he doing down that low? Definitely higher on Parker than the consensus here. Jacksonville, nothing special, right? 20th, so I guess decent against wide receivers, but I don't know about that. So we'll get Parker right back in there. I think he's going to pick off where he left off as long as he has Fitzmagic just slinging him that rock. Sanders, again, so disappointing. I would say Corey Davis, assuming A.J. Brown's out and there's not a lot of optimism around him this week, right back into your wide receiver 3 plans for Corey Davis. I can't have Fuller above Cooks. I mean, Fuller, again, stretching on the sideline, looking gimpy. Pittsburgh, a great secondary, so I'm not saying you got to target them. I'm going to probably put a tier. We can get Gallup inside here just because the matchup's so juicy against Seattle, but clearly I'm a lot lower on Gallup than the ACR. These are like my high upside wide receiver 3s, ideally your flexes. Mike Williams was not what you wanted to see, but I think we could get a lot better soon. Anthony Miller, pathetic week, but if he's going to find the end zone, it'd be in a matchup against Atlanta, no doubt about it. I like Visca. I really do. Fuller against Pittsburgh, again, still makes no sense to me how he's, maybe right here, but I'd rather have Visca. Other guys here in my rankings, Traquan looked awesome. And this is assuming, of course, Michael Thomas stays out, but that's a generous Green Bay. Yep, 9th most points. He looked like the alpha target hog for Drew Brees, was getting it done intermediately, not just like a deep decoy anymore. So give me him. Sammy Watkins not expected to play, right, with a concussion or at best 50-50. So that means McCole Hardman, I think. We saw him get peppered as soon as Watkins left the lineup. So I like him. I think this is finally the week Preston Williams comes out to play. So give him a bump up against Jacksonville. Plenty generous as a defense as a whole. So you can see how low I am on Will Fuller for this week, which means he's obviously going for his 55-point outbreak. Um, Other than that, I like Harry a little bit more than he's showing. Um, I like Russell Gage a little bit more than we're seeing here. Um, the rest of this, does Samuel get a little bit of bump up in backfield usage? I guess, if Kirk's ever going to get it done, it would be against Detroit. This offense is so explosive; it should be able to sustain um, two guys, but he also has been just complete dog mess. So, not sprinting to keep him in my lineup. Hamler, I think, is named just like as a Hail Mary chuck out there above Cobb. Definitely. Like, why is Cobb getting anything? See you later, Randall. Chase Claypool, I think those touchdowns could happen. Those big 50 to 88 yards last weekend. Those touchdowns could become more of a reality. This guy's a size speed freak. And I'm willing to take some flyers on him well above Scotty fucking Miller. Ugh. Disturbing. I'd have Claypool right in that same MVS range is where he slots in for me. Keelan Cole, I think, has to get a little bit of a respectable bump. Back-to-back weeks finding the end zone, leading that team in targets. He's kind of one of those home run swings of the week, right around that Claypool range, in my opinion. Other than him, other names to look at. Let's see. I'll leave these up and see if you guys have any guys for me to consider here. What do you think of trading Mixon for David Johnson and Fournette PPR? I was desperate at running back, maybe, but Fournette's, I think, going to be steadily inconsistent. As a closer, he's going to be good, but we don't know how often that will be. David Johnson, you know my opinions on already. Bag of dirt. Not a fan at all. But I could see, he looked good against Houston. It's just a murderer's row of games these next few. So I'm not sprinting to trade Mixon. I really think Mixon rebounds. Just like he did last year. Thinking about selling Gurley and Boyd for Mixon and John Smokey Brown. Thoughts? I would 100% do that. I'd rather have Mixon than Gurley in a heartbeat. And then Boyd and Smokey are comparable. I might even have Smokey, given the matchups and the way Josh Allen's playing, right at that level of Boyd. So huge upgrade at running back, in my opinion. And then that falls down for Boyd. Robinson, Hunt, or Fournette at running back 3 or flex. I think I'm leaning Hunt. I mean, the guy has 36 points. He's right toward the top 12 in fantasy running backs, more than Nick Chubb. And the thing with him is he's never going to get game flowed because he's always the top pass catching guy. So as good as Robinson's looked, I'm not trusting Fournette quite yet. Looked really good on that touchdown run, but he got a lot of work because Ronald Jones fumbled it. I think they're going to give Ronald Jones a shot to redeem himself here. So give me Hunt, then give me Robinson if you don't want the committee. How much fab would you be willing to pay for Henderson in a 12-team league, probably dropping Perriman for him? I would drop Perriman for him, definitely, and I would give right around that 20-ish, 25-ish if you need a running back. Definitely going for it. What else do we have? Sorry, it's the comment just jumped there. Like your show very much. Thank you, David Allen. Like having you here very much. Give AJ another chance this week with that target share. Fizz or go Boyd. I go Boyd. I didn't want to give AJ a chance last week. What are you talking about? No chance on AJ. The target share was nice, yeah, but I at the end of the day, volume is nice, but being efficient with it is key. Flex, David Johnson, Hollywood Brown, or T.Y. Hilton, full PPR. Let's get Hilton out of any questions till we see it from him. So then David Johnson facing Pittsburgh. Hit the mic by accident there, and muted myself. My fault. But David Johnson against Pittsburgh. not the right matchup. Give me Hollywood Brown. Shootout style game. They're going to need points. I think this is a nice rebound week for Hollywood. I have Dak. Oh, yeah. So, Cam should be expendable, as should Dak, but you're just loading your opponent up if that one. So I like your thought process. You got to trade Dak or Cam and get some real value for him. But why give up your alpha wide receiver one? It looks like you're right. Got to keep Julio. Don't apologize, but just don't panic on the guy. And if you're gonna sell him, get what's fair for him. Gerald Robinson. Of these options, who would you offer for CMC? Eckler, Sanders, Taylor, Drake, Jacobs. Should either side add something? It depends on how desperate CMC's owner is. Is he 0-2 and it can't, eat that brutal 4 to 6 week absence? Then, I'd say go after him, but I wouldn't give up Sanders or Taylor. I wouldn't give up Jacobs. And Drake is pushing the line. Eckler really is the only one on that list that I'm like, oh, yeah, I'd do that straight up. I'd have CMC probably above all those guys on a big board, but it depends on where his owner's at. I'd say Drake and Eckler could probably be moved, but Drake's also about to destroy Detroit. So I might hold out and let him kind of wither. I wouldn't trade Sanders, Taylor, or Jacobs, just locked in bell cows week in and week out. And I really think Drake's just about that too. We already saw that one. Hey, Deontay Johnson or Marquise Brown? I go Brown, but Deontay has really closed that gap. So I wonder if you can get them both in there. Looking at my rankings, I got Deontay right here at 22 and Marquise Brown at 18. So real close between those guys. Let me just keep sifting through and finding, is there any other, last bottom of the barrel? I'll kind of tear these off as like your last little dart throws here. I'll get N'Keal Harry into there. You know what? This gets cut off at Gage as like I can use that, and then these are the dart throws. I would not have Ayuk in any of my starting lineups. He fits. Come on. So in terms of the points allowed again, at Golden Tate might get a little more higher usage, but he's facing San Fran. That's not a great matchup. I do think Ayuk could kind of come out and have a big coming out party. It's a very bad tackling Giants team. There. Oh, Sample's the tight end from Cincy. Yeah, had 9 targets, caught 7. That's right, the backup to Uzomah. And clearly that position was one to get peppered. But yeah, I go Schultz. He's my personal favorite there. My wide receiver tight end is brutal. Need 2. AJ Green, Cook, Edwards, Miller, Djax. Help. Who's a waiver wire sleeper wide receiver? Well, we talked about Keelan Cole. Like him. Chase Claypool, I also really like at wide receiver as a sleeper. But Russell Gage is out there in 21% of leagues, David Allen. So I'd be leaning towards him. Or also Traquan Smith and Laviska Shenault. Both guys out there in a lot of waivers that could go off this week. And last but not least, Preston Williams, I'm seeing getting dropped a lot. And I think he's about to kind of have his coming out party here against Jacksonville. You want to move Cam, though, just don't know who to really target. I have Mixon, Eckler, and Jones, Woods, Moore, Higbee. So you got pretty good, solid receivers. I'd say your running backs are where you want to try to upgrade here. So if you're moving like Cam and Jones, you should be looking for like a top-end bell cow. Is there any teams out there that have those real nice bell cows in abundance? I would look to that, or to get like 2 really, really rock-solid RBs. You're underselling Cam and Jones, but that you got to be looking for running back help is what I'm thinking, Jack. Let me finish up these wide receivers and before we move on to tight end. Any other names that we got to have in here? Nothing that I'm seeing. Not Scotty Miller. That's for damn fucking sure. Bourne, hasn't done anything with his shots to be that team leader. Michael Thomas, I'm just going to X out of because He's not expected to show up this week. Yeah, it's David Moore. You're looking for like big shots at big home run touchdowns. Like he could be one. Um, Andy Isabella, a couple big long plays. Maybe he starts to carve himself out a role. But yeah, there's nothing doing much elsewhere here. If Brashad Perriman's healthy, he could be a play. But we've reached the dredges, folks. Hopefully you're not looking in the top 60 wide receivers and you have something better than that. Kenny G, as you saw, yeah, he's towards the top for me, Mitchell. I like him, as you saw, never mind. Raheem Mostert's injury is killing me. Raheem Mostert. Jack Moore, and glad to have you tuned in here. Do you have Jerick McKinnon available? Because I think Jerick Monster McKinnon is about to go absolutely ham Jack Moore. But yeah, Mostert looked so good before going down an 80-yard touchdown right at the start of the game. So it was too bad because it could have been like a 200-yard day for the guy. I like Mostert obviously a lot, but I really think Jerick McKinnon, you saw he was in my top 20 running backs for this week. I think he could go off within his absence here. Let's get your tight ends ranked. Kelsey, always your runaway number one. Nothing crazy there. In the matchup against Andrews, we're going to let these settle here. I hate when the rankings tool does that, so I'm going to just wait 1 second and look at the matchup count of the points allowed to tight ends. Sorry for the lag for a sec while stuff loads. We'll get a couple questions while that's happening. What do you think of Gage out of ATL? He's been great. Yeah, absolutely. A 23% target share on a team that's going to constantly have to throw. Give it to me. Love Gage. I think he's going to be one of the better values of the year. Flex spot, CeeDee Lamb, Marvin Jones, Brandon Cooks. They start opposing quarterback as Watson, considering Cooks to neutralize. I don't necessarily force in those neutralizers, especially when it could be a double whammy if Watson does nothing. They're getting Pittsburgh. That's not an area I'm targeting as a neutralizing spot. So I go CeeDee Lamb above those guys. Seattle, shootout style game, clearly above for me. Henry Ruggs droppable? Probably. He's seeming more like a decoy the more and more I see him. But it depends what the option is you're dropping him for. A hate cut, just a hate cut? No. But if you actually get some value there, Jake, then sure. Best tight end option rest of season, Gesicki or Thomas, both on the waivers. I definitely think Gesicki. He looked like an absolute monster this last weekend. So give me some Mike Gesicki. That's where I'm leaning. In terms of points allowed to tight ends, Cleveland has been definitely generous. We saw, especially last week against the Bengals, just peppering the tight ends there. The Saints, so shockingly generous to tight ends. Jaguars, Eagles, Falcons against everybody. Ravens, not a bad matchup for tight ends, which, of course, we saw Kelsey towards the top there. Mark Andrews, Kansas City, also pretty generous. So that's why those two are the clear tier alone in a game where they're just going to go crazy bananas against each other. Titans, though, remain one of the more generous teams. Washington Football, Buffalo Bills, and the Chargers as your top 10 in terms of generosity to tight ends. Waller, 12-catch day. How's New England? They've been among the better teams. Yeah, 30th. But this is the Waller show. So I go him. I go him all day. Bengals are actually not that generous. So, Zach Ertz, I think, a little overvalued after 2 busts in a row. Not something that I think I have to target. Logan Thomas, meanwhile, getting that really generous matchup. You got to like that. Indeed. Philadelphia, the 4th most tight ends, points. Jacksonville, the 3rd. So Jacksonville getting Gesicki. I really think Gesicki could be in for another monster day. The 3rd most points allowed to the position. So where is Mike? There you are, Mike. I got to get him right into my top 8 or so. Higbee, that 3-touchdown day and a generous Rams team to the position. Let me get this off. So tight end ones, I'm going to kind of cut off right here. Goddard, obviously a very disappointing week last week after looking like he might be that number one there. Just didn't do a thing. Really, he'll have his big days, but I don't feel that good about him. I do feel very good about Jonnu Smith. Noah Fant, too. Tampa Bay, what are they? Tampa, middle of the pack. For Noah Fant, he's got to be way higher in rankings. San Fran, saw Bengals were middle of the pack. San Fran, among the best. The Colts, shockingly, the best against tight ends. I don't know if that's an anomaly, but all the more reason to get fucking Chris Herndon out of your face. The Jets have been, generous to everybody, including tight ends. So we saw, Jordan Reed put up 2 touchdowns against him last week. Jordan fucking Reed, to reiterate. All righty. Thomas, that matchup against the most points allowed to tight ends, I think has to get bumped up. What's the Vikings, though? Vikings 21st, so decent. But Jonnu's just become matchup proof, in my opinion. He's got to be in your tight end 1 tier here. And then these last remaining starters, I think people are underrating. Mo Alley Cox with Doyle out. That offense just peppers tight ends, and I think that continues. I think Chicago's been one of the more generous teams, right? Yeah, 14th. So Hayden Hurst in a good spot. I got to keep, these guys right there. Logan Thomas, more matchup. That's why I have him so high. I think Dalton Schultz, though, how's Seattle? That guy saw 10 targets this last week. Seahawks, one of the better teams, but it's still early with those numbers. I think Dalton Schultz could easily enter your streaming dreams. As an owner of Goddard, I'd probably rather have some of these flyers right now in my lineup. Ingram, the matchup's tough, but let's not go overboard here. Noah Fant, as I was saying, I love even with Driscoll. I think he's got to be within your top, tight end ones. Such a freak athlete, so good after the catch, just an absolute monster. Stafford or Tannehill for David Cooper. I go Tannehill. No way he's finding my bench. I get Galladay's back. Arizona could be a shootout game, but Tannehill is just a touchdown monster. Give me him. We're not expecting Kittle back, so let's X out of him and consider what Jordan Reed would be this week without him. And I guess the Giants. The thing is Jimmy Garoppolo playing? Because if not, then he's down here. But if he is, a Giants team, I can't imagine is that good. 29th, maybe decent, or maybe they just haven't faced much. But this rounds out the last possible starters here. Hooper only in there because of matchup, but I don't feel great about him. Now you're looking at just trash. I would say Eifert should be bumped up here as a potential Hail Mary. And any other Hail Marys here, not seeing much, no. So that, your Hail Marys are the Mo Alley Coxes, the Dalton Schultzes. That's where you're taking your Hail Mary. Keep the questions coming, guys. I'm going to rip through defense here, rip through kickers, and then we'll be done for the day with our ranking shows. Pittsburgh, such a good defense, but Houston could put up some points against them. I'd rather have the 49ers. Some Giants without Saquon. They're their top offensive weapon. I think the Bucks looked good against Carolina, a well-stocked Carolina team. I think they put up double digits. And then they now get Jeff Driscoll. I think they're going to eat that guy. So I love that matchup. And I love the Colts against the Jets. That's a no-brainer. Anything with Adam Gase on the other side is something to go against. Just god-awful coach. I think the Chargers and the Bills both make good streams, especially the Bills if Tyrod's starting. Revenge game, I don't buy it for this week. Titans, I'm not all that into. I don't think they're a great defense at all. Definitely give me the Patriots ahead of them and the Patriots ahead of the Chargers. But I do think the Chargers make a nice stream with no McCaffrey. That D-line is very tough. So I would put that here. The Bills are getting the Rams. That's not as good of a matchup, in my opinion. So I would not have them up there. I think Arizona, facing Detroit's kind of sketchy. When they get Galladay back, they looked pretty good on D, but I'm not sprinting to that. I do think the Browns are one of the better streams of the week facing the Washington football team. That seems to always be a gold mine, but let's just double check because defense is random, but also pretty matchup necessary to check too. So the Eagles have been surprisingly the most generous. Lots of sacks. That D-line, any D-line can really get to them. The Eagles are facing the Bengals. I mean, maybe not a target this week, but a cheap DraftKings plug. Texans have been pretty generous, so maybe I'm a little too low on the Steelers. Such a good defense, and that offensive line is just in shambles. So, you know what? I see that. My top 10, I feel decent about. I guess you can feel good here. The Eagles' defense is bad, though. And it's not like the Bengals at 9th. I guess they've been decent to quarterbacks. Minnesota has been good to quarterbacks. These bad offensive lines giving up a lot of sacks. So that's where the Titans come in play with a good defensive front. I guess they could get there. Carolina, pretty good to defenses. A lot of turnovers last week at least. So they get the Chargers, as we talked about. I think New Orleans, they get Green Bay, so no, not looking there. Baltimore's D. When you're getting to this range, you kind of just got to go with defensive talent. And Baltimore obviously has it. If the Giants are facing Nick Mullins, they could end up entering that sneaky streamer conversation here. But until we know what Garoppolo's status is, I can't bank on them. I do think Washington football team, the Browns have to be one of the better teams, right? For quarterbacks 12th. And that D-line could it's a good offensive line, but you know what? To round out my top 12, I'm not hating going Washington this week. Don't love, the Seahawks most weeks, especially not against Dallas. It kind of gets ugly after those top 12s. I'm trying to see, is there any potential streamer? I wouldn't have the Chargers like the lowest. But no, there's nobody down here. You're really getting desperate if you need I guess the Eagles would probably be your best streaming bet there for defense. And last but not least, the good old kickers. Let's get those legs some love. Your consistent top 4 here. I'm going to get Greg the Leg just above Will Lutz because Drew Brees kind of looks like a bag of dirt these last few days. Gonzalez, though, it makes sense as a number 5, rounding it out. I do think Mason Crosby with Rodgers on the FU tour looks awesome. Blanket chip, you get the glasses. That's always a pleasant surprise to open his picture. Gould against the Giants, though, I would have to have above both those guys. Young Ho, baby. 17 points. Young Hui, I know is the name, but I like to call him Young Ho. And I don't like Myers. He just seems to always be like 7, 6, 5, 9. Never big, monster weak swingers, which I think you can get from the Tampa Bay guy eventually. Big Joey Sly with that offense stalling out, I think could be a good play. Jake Elliott, he hasn't been getting it done at all. And any other kickers? How has the slow man been doing over there for the Rams? I know the offense has been playing well, so I think he gets a nice little bump. But after the top 15, you don't need to know about my kickers. So I'm just looking and seeing, is there anyone down here who I think could go crazy? And I don't see any. So let's cut that off. Right here with the Badgley, the king of the flow. And those are the rankings. Let's get these last couple questions. Marvin Jones or Jay Kelly. Now, that's an interesting one, David Cooper, because Kelly does get Carolina. You saw he was in my top 25 running backs. I think a very solid bet for a touchdown, possibly 2. So PPR, Marvin Jones against a bad Arizona secondary. I'm not buying them. They're high against receiver ranks because they faced a bad wide receiver, deficient 49ers team, and then Washington. We saw McLaurin eat them alive. So I can see Marvin Jones there. I think Galladay's returning too. I like Kelly. Give me Kelly. The touchdown upside there. That's where I'm leaning right now. Odell or James Robinson at flex. I do like Odell this week. I think this is a good matchup. I had him up high on a defense that's very good, Washington against the run, and pretty suspect in the secondary against the pass. So I like Odell, even in that low volume role. This is the type of week he could get deep and burn that secondary. So give me Odell, despite that nice volume. I mean, Miami too, a nice matchup for James Robinson. You're looking for floor or ceiling. The floor is definitely higher with Robinson because you're getting 15 plus carries. But Odell just, I think, could have a monster game. I'd have a hard time benching him this week. All righty, folks. Well, that wraps up the Week 3 rankings rundown. Thanks so much for those of you who stuck it out and enjoyed the show, got your questions answered, I hope. I, of course, am the Wolf of Roto Street, RotoStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves. Check out the site for all our updated rankings. Join us on Thursday where we will update these rankings live, or come to our Reddit AMA. Would love your upvotes and support there. And if you're on YouTube, or you even if you're not, hitting that subscribe button, hitting your notifications so you know when we're going live. We really want to get to that 1,000 subscribers in the next month. So please subscribe, comment, all that good stuff really helps. So guys, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate it. You know where to find me at Roto Street Wolf if you're watching the replay and you have extra questions. See you guys later.